Hello, everybody. Sorry for the delay, a little bit of technical difficulties. I've just learned a whole bunch about the Norwood Public Schools Facebook account. Anywho, so this is Dr. Thomson, Superintendent of Schools. Trying to do my Facebook Live, and I'm a little bit late, and I apologize for that. But let me start. I basically got about 60 questions. From that, I've kind of compiled trying to answer as many of them as possible. So there still would be some time afterwards to maybe take some questions. So if you are listening out there, if you could just kind of hold off just a little bit until I get through answering the questions I already have, because I don't have a moderating partner, which I guess is another thing I need to think about if I'm going to keep doing these. But so these are unprecedented times. And, if you asked me a year ago whether we would be trying to run school in a remote learning or distance learning scenario, I would have told you were crazy. And the reason for that is that children are different types of learners than adult learners. As you get further up into high school, there's more similarities than differences. They're much more independent. Can really work in kind of a distance learning or an online learning environment a little bit better. We get a little bit, step back at the middle school, but then you get into elementary school, and that's difficult because it really does rely on human to human interaction. So, a lot of questions about, are we planning? What are we doing? And it's very frustrating because it really is a kind of a hurry up and wait situation. We're constantly looking for or waiting for guidance from the state, guidance and direction from the federal government. And all of that takes time. And we need to be a little bit patient. So we kind of get an inkling of what different paths could be. And what we are doing is basically kind of planning and starting talking about what those paths might look like, creating a mental image or a possibility template, if you will, and then kind of go from there. So, but we really don't know what the future is going to entail, and that is changing daily and weekly. So, it is frustrating, but we need to be flexible thinkers and flexible planners. We can't plan for something that might not become. We have to kind of really try to stay centered in the now or the next week or two, and then go from there. So the first thing, a lot of questions about, remote learning and why it is the way it is. And I'm going to start by saying that doing remote learning, especially with children, it's not going to replace regular school, brick and mortar, coming to school, working with peers, working with your teachers, working with other teachers. It's very difficult to do that. The Department of Elementary and Secondary Ed, DESE or DESE, has asked that schools look at a half day or a 3-hour school day, and that is the planning that we are going by. And the reason for that is it's very difficult to expect children to be independent without an adult direction for more than that. And the model in school has changed. And if you have not actually been in school in the last 4 or 5 years, especially elementary school, you will not have seen the change. But we do not do large group or very little large group, 20 people sitting in desks in a row, listening to the teacher and then doing worksheets or copying their spelling words. It's very different. It's more dynamic. We're trying to we do use shorter instructional periods with maximum practice and coaching on the side. And we're trying to replicate that model in our remote learning. So, and students are used to that. They're used to working independently, working with groups on tasks. And that's what the learning model and that's what the learning plans are that are coming out. They are very much like what your kids are doing in a regular school day in school. So, and I know parents don't necessarily understand that and have difficulty with that. But this really is an opportunity for your children to become more independent and autonomous learners. The intent is not for you to teach them per se, but it's more for you to facilitate, help, and basically create the structure where they can do it. And 3 hours in a day, or sitting for 3 hours for some kids, is very, very difficult. Maybe it needs to be 45 minutes and go do something active or creative, and then come back and do something else, or do something that helps out in the in the house, contribute, and then go from there. So, another question was about Hangouts and Zoom, and why aren't we doing those as regular instructions? And there's actually lots of reasons. First of all, it's very difficult to have meaningful instruction with children in large groups in a video conference. There's a joke going around about some kid putting a cardboard cutout of themselves in front and going off and leaving. But it's hard to have that kind of engagement, especially without being in the same room. And we do realize that. So, so what we're doing basically is we have weekly plans that are being developed collaboratively across the district. So although you'll see differences between different classrooms per se, and that might have more to do with the the kinds of children or the students in the class and where they are, but the learning plans are based on the same template. They roll out from our curriculum coordinators or our principals to our teachers, and then they adapt them for their class, personalize them for their kids in their class, and they know them better than I do sitting in central office. So once they roll out, and we're looking to increase this, but there are weekly check-ins and class meetings and things along that line a couple times during the week. And if for some reason you can't meet that time, then there's always email. Often teachers will find another time when they can meet with kids. We have advised teachers, unless they are a service provider for a special education student, not to get into one-on-one conferences. So you'll see small groups that will be increasing. And I have to say, there is no teacher in the district who was using Google Hangout as an instructional tool until the end of March. It was only a month ago, folks. This really is not evolution, but revolution in a lot of ways. So, so teachers, we had to show them how to use this, create the tools. The kids pick it up very quickly, but that has been ongoing. So when people say it's different, from school to school, it's going to be different from classroom to classroom, depending on whether that's a special education classroom, whether it's a classroom with a large number of EL students. You will see some variation. Maybe that particular group of kids struggle with a certain concept, so they're approaching it a different way. Maybe you have a group of kids that are more visual learners than auditory learners, so they're approaching it that way. So there is that customization, and that's what we pay our professionals to do. The other piece that I've gotten around remote learning is, and it's equal. It's oh my God, I'm overwhelmed. It's way too much. We're not doing enough. It's way too little. We're not doing it like such and such or so and so. And I'm going to speak a little bit to those quickly. First of all, we're following the DESE guidelines. We are a public school. We have to follow the federal and state laws. When you talk about New Hampshire or Connecticut or Rhode Island, those are different state laws. Those are different commissioners of education. And our goal is to meet the needs of all of our learners. We're a public school. We teach everybody. A private school, and I taught for 6 years in a private school. Okay, you cannot compare a Catholic memorial to Norwood. They do not have to teach special education. They do not have to teach English language learners. They have probably less economically disadvantaged students than we do. And I'll remind everyone out there that 40% of our students are high needs, which is any one of three categories: English language learners, special education, or economically disadvantaged. They only count once, but they count. So 2 out of every 5 fall into that category in some way, shape, or form. So we are following their guidelines with how to approach this. What has changed is now we're trying to move the curriculum forward. So when this started, and again, no one has ever envisioned, trying to move a curriculum forward without having kids in school. So it basically was trying to deepen learning and keep things fresh, review and deepen. Then after 2.5 weeks, the federal government relaxed the Individual with Disabilities Act, which is the 1970 federal law that basically provided for special education. Okay, and basically that was something we had to consider, because if we were teaching and not trying to provide servicing for kids in some way, shape, or form, we would be leaving them behind and disadvantaging them. So those we were given new guidance from the federal government. Once that was done, then we were given the okay to try to progress the curriculum. Currently, Friday night at 10:30, we got new revised guidelines from the department, and I'm happy to say that we are right in line with those. There's always things we can work on. We are constantly looking at what we're doing and how to do it better, and again, evolving. And part of that is training staff with some new methods and creating new paradigms on how to teach kids. But one of the big pieces of that is the Department of Ed has come out with essential learning, so essential standards that kids really need to have secure in order to be able to start the next grade. So this next week we are focusing on lesson plans that are focused on those essential learnings and not just trying to move our regular curriculum forward now that it has turned to being out for the entire year. So the learning plans are required work, our work that we want students to do to progress in the curriculum, to meet those essential standards. But with that, and also on school web pages, are options to expand learning, to do other creative things, other projects in there. And if you have a student that is not finding enough, I would encourage them to take part in those. The other thing I would strongly recommend that parents do is to set aside some separate time for reading, and start with half an hour, work up to 45 minutes. Maybe it's an hour. One of the greatest gifts you can give your children is them becoming a reader. People who read well, read quickly, and gather information through reading do extremely well in any academic or professional pursuit. So that is important. So I would suggest that, if you're on the it's not enough side, that, preparing them for, being successful in the future is really something to look at. The other thing that's coming down based on this new guidance is that we are now, and I think the high school has already sent out their grading rubric for the remainder of the year. Now that we know that we're not going to be coming back, those high school is for credit. It's basically a credit, no credit situation. If they do not get credit, they're going to have to do credit recovery. They're going to have to retake classes. It is set up to be fair. But that's something that everyone should be aware of. And I would check in with, your high school students and making sure that they're making the progress they're supposed to be making. But our elementary schools are putting forth a engagement rubric, and that they will be using along with our standard-based report card to report out on students. And the middle schools also put out a rubric. And we're going to be using all of these to assess where kids are to figure out what they need when we return. The other question that I keep getting is, what are the consequences if they don't do the work? And this is a bigger, and again, it's a pass, fail, grade, no grade type situation. Excuse me. But we need to realize that all of this work is going to affect their long-term future. What we're looking to do is we're looking to have students progress so that we don't have huge, giant gaps of students not being engaged in learning for 5 or 6 months. And all we're asking is that families do their best. Any effort is better than no effort. But, effort equals success. Effort equals reducing gaps. We're focused on student progress, and that effort will affect their making progress. And we're going to see some variation. We know that. We're going to have to plan for that when we come back. We're going to have to plan for that for perhaps summer programming. I think that when we come back, and again, I'll get more into what is school like if we reopen in a minute, but, we're probably going to have to come into the next grade and spend some time securing those essential learnings. It might be a focus of our summer program, so this might not end. We might see an enhanced summer programming depending on what we are enabled and allowed to do as far as social distancing go, where we have more students engaged in that based on what we're seeing for engagement and progress on those rubrics. But ultimately it's to come back and eventually be that October, maybe early November, then we kind of really get into the new essential learning. So what the Department of Elementary Secondary Ed has basically done by giving us those standards is telling us what we should really concentrate on, what is really essential that kids know. So really boiling it down from the really need to know, the nice to know, and it's okay or interesting to know, so that we're focusing on what's most important. And I strongly suspect that that's what the assessments will be tied to and focused to. So with that being said, another question I've gotten is, can we get more paper? Can we get more worksheets? And this goes back to what we're trying to do, and what a lot of the paper work is really about. Usually when we talk about packets and workbooks, it's really about practicing skills, not learning new skills. So while, I understand that screen time can be a problem, and there are certain instances where it causes headaches and things along that line, we're probably not, especially, younger grades, maybe a little bit differently, but as we get further up, it's going to be very difficult to just have paper packets, which is why the digital technology is so important. We once upon a time you would sit, you listen to the lesson, then you do 20 whatever problems that practice what you just was poured in your brain, and that is essentially not what we're doing. We're trying to teach thinking, mathematical reasoning, problem solving, communication skills, and those are not easily accessed through paper-based things. There is a place for practice and paper, and if that is something that you're struggling with, I would definitely contact the teacher and contact the principals. It also gets difficult to distribute those sorts of things, especially for families who do not have printers. And what I do see in the learning plans is I do see paper-based activities in that, especially as options for people to do. We are not planning on wide-scale retention next year. And this gets back to what are the consequences? Will my kid move on? We are planning on every student moving on. I don't think it's particularly fair or justified to have a kid, go back and do a certain grade over again because we had a virus and we closed school down. However, we need to realize that not doing the work or not making the effort, could possibly impact what happens for a student forward. And we are going to plan activities and programs to close those, expanded summer programming, enhanced after-school programming. We're hoping that the CARES Act, that the federal money for schools coming, as a coronavirus relief act, will help us do some of that. But then, depending on how much they have to do, depends on how much they're doing now. So keep that in mind. The other question I had was about MCAS. What is MCAS? Basically, MCAS is canceled for every grade except for grade 10. Grade 10, as you know, is a competency determination. You have to pass your 10th grade MCAS by law in Massachusetts in order to get a high school diploma. They are looking to reschedule the grade 10 and 2020 MCAS for fall, midwinter, something along that line. The one thing that's kind of still up in the air, they haven't decided on, is is the grade 9. Usually most of our students take a science test, which is another competency. You have to pass a science test in order to get a diploma. For our ninth graders, they're actually thinking they might not have that for that class as a competency. We'll see. The other thing that came up in the questions you sent me, thank you very much, was issues with technology. Quality of this, links not working, that sort of thing. And again, so the way it's working is those learning plans are coming out, and then there's and teachers are going to be going through what the learning plan is, with the class, kind of as a class meeting sort of scenario, and check-ins and small groups. But if you're having an issue, let the teacher know what the issue is right away. Perhaps it's a teacher solvable one, or it's a principal solvable one, or it might need to go to our tech department. There are some things that are involved here. I mean, we are lucky in that, the override was passed last year, because a lot of the tools that we're using now were directly purchased with funding from the override. Again, back to my statements about investing in the classroom. If we did not have those funds, if we were not able to invest in, our classroom tools that teachers have, a lot of this online learning that we're doing now would not be possible. So, just want to, go back to that. But if you have an issue with technology, definitely go through that process. And again, like for the math program, which is Pearson, and Pearson also does all the MCAS testing here in Massachusetts. So they've gone from one class signing on and watching those math videos to every kid in every class signing on and watching those videos. So, there might be some technical glitches. If you're seeing that, skip it, go on to something different that's in the learning plan, let the teacher know, and then come back to that. Be informative, reach out, but also, be a little flexible. And I know I've gotten a couple comments about the videos and the stupid robot, but you need to realize we're not teaching kids how to calculate. We're teaching kids how to think mathematically and to solve problems. So if you watch the videos, and if the kid has a problem, it doesn't get how to do something, have them rewatch the video. That's all. Rewatch the video. And then if there's a problem, have them reach out to their teacher for guidance. And again, this is a chance to bring that autonomous, independent learner piece more into focus for your child. So you're coaching them on how to be, independent. So keep that in mind. So another question I had was about the budget. So, and I'm sure you've heard, concerns about state projections falling off. I think the latest estimate is a fall off of about $4 billion. And we don't really know what that target is. So we are moving forward with our FY21 budget. We might need to make adjustments to that, prior, to school starting back up in the fall, and we're prepared for that. We are looking at that, but it's very difficult to have that conversation until you have a target. The other things that are coming in is we're probably not going to get a realistic number. I mean, one report was saying the middle of July, the other one was saying, the middle of June. So we're probably not going to see a state budget and everything sorted out until that time. And then there's the question of what other funding sources are going to come into this. There is the state rainy day fund. There's the governor's emergency relief fund that has been activated when you have a state of emergency. So there's funding sources that have not been talked about. There's also, again, the CARES Act. Will that be able to be carried over or help? We don't know yet. The other piece, is that has already happened is that they've allowed us to carry grants over, not just till to fall of September of 20, but all the way to FY21, allowing us to carry some federal money forward. So that's kind of in the works. I did get a question about bus refunds, and we are looking at that. We are looking at our budget right now. We're looking at our budget to see what can be done to save money and maybe pre-buy some things we might need. but as far as bus refunds go, I think it's important to point out that the bus fee is only about 30 to 40% of the actual cost of transporting a student. We did transport students for basically 2/3 of the year. So if you look at 1/3 of the $200, and then we also have to consider that we're still paying the bus company. We still have a contract with the bus company. We shouldn't break the contract with the bus company, because when we do go back, we are going to need buses. We don't want our bus company to go under and go bankrupt, because then we will not be able to bring our kids to school. So there's a piece of that we are still paying. So I think that number is probably significantly smaller than people actually think it is, but the school committee is going to look at that. So now the big one, graduation. So I'm going to talk a little bit about, because I've heard such and such school is doing this, such and such school is doing that. I'm going to talk a little bit about the challenges to this, the caring for students that we're trying to keep in mind here, and then I'll talk a little bit about our process. So one of the things is, can we delay till August? Can we delay till it's safe to have a graduation? And it comes back to I'm writing down a note because I forgot something. So I draw the scenario of going from groups of 10 and ripping off the Band-Aid and having a school of 1,000 kids at the high school show up the next day is probably not a realistic scenario in our present situation. Only having groups of 10 to trying to have a graduation outside of several thousand people is probably not realistic. So my concern with putting it off is, okay, you put it off so you have 5 small graduations. Then we get into other barriers. If we're able to have some sort of assemblies in late July, August, there's gonna be a lot of competition for that time. You're gonna have kids going for the kids who normally would have gone for orientation in the spring are not going for orientation. You've got clubs and jobs that they're working at that maybe everyone needs to be at those. You have students who have committed to go off to the military, and when are they leaving? And so they don't get to go to graduation. You have careers, kids that are starting jobs and such, and is that a barrier? So that's a consideration. And basically, I think we need to come to the understanding that whatever we do is not fully going to replicate what traditionally has been. And I think it's okay to be upset with that. I think it's okay to grieve that. But that is the reality. I mean, no matter what we do, it's not going to be just like 2019. So and this applies to all of our closure end of the year activities, and we are looking at those. 8th grade promotion, end of year 5th grade, to see what we can do that would bring closure and some sort of end to the process. I think closure is a thing, and putting off graduation, does not give closure to some things. And perhaps we look at bringing closure, but then also bringing 2020 back together again, maybe in the late fall or early fall for some other event that can do that, because we all would like to see that happen, and I know that those kids would do. So all of our schools are in the midst of looking at that. I don't expect any significant plans probably till the middle of May. At the high school, what we are doing is we're bringing in the high school class officers, sitting with our school administration, their advisors, public safety, board of health, and going through some options, looking at some options that are going to bring closure, look at bringing kids together and celebrating this great class of 2020 that we have. And then going back to the class of 2020 and asking them their opinion. It's a survey, a vote. I mean, I don't know how you want to put it, but, looking at them. So, people have asked me, well, what are you doing for graduation? And my answer is this: it's not my graduation. This is the class of 2020's graduation. We're going to involve them in this process, listen to their voice. And it's going to be a learning process for them about what are some of the concerns and what are some of the things we want to do and how to go through that process, about vetting ideas, coming up with several good solutions, and kind of looking at those, and it, for lack of a better word, it sucks. It really does. It sucks. These kids have worked hard. They deserve to have all of that. And, it's just, it's hard. And it's hard for the staff of the high school, and it's hard for their teachers to not have, that piece. So that's kind of where we are. We're just starting the process, but it will be a process. The other question that has come through in those 60 questions I got in the last couple of days is, what would a return to school look like? We don't really know for sure. We're awaiting guidance from the state on summer activities, and that probably will be a guideline for any reopening, whether we're able to reopen this summer with a summer program or whether it's reopening in September. And again, back to my analogy of groups of 10 to a high school walking in of 1,000, it probably would be something in between what we're doing now and what we were doing back on March 10th and 11th. It might be, scheduled times of day or scheduled days that kids are coming in, to visit with their teachers and do some one-on-one interaction. I strongly anticipate that we'll be taking temperatures and things along that line, on the way in. Obviously we can't load a bus up, with a full 45 kids on there. So those are some of the issues that we will have to grapple with, and how many we can bring in at a time depends on the guidelines and where we are. But the reality is, until we have an effective testing and isolation strategy, which we need tests to do, or we have an effective treatment, which we're still working on, or someday, hopefully sooner, a vaccine, we're going to be in some variation of, group limiting, in order to get there. So, I trust me, I wish it was different. I wish that we were, we were doing, I wish nothing had changed. It gets kind of lonely here. So, I'm going to go over, and look at some of the questions that, some of the questions that we have here. So I have grandchildren in second grade. It's hard to teach new things to them. They get frustrated. Yes. Yeah, that's perfectly understandable. And if that's the case, again, it's spacing it out. It's time of the day for when they do things. And I would reach out to their teachers and ask them for advice on what they would suggest they do. Maybe we chunk it up for them so they don't try to do a whole lesson at once. Or maybe they do math at a certain time and then something they like a little bit better and then something, so it's not 4 difficult things at once. But I would definitely reach out, and I realize that. But also, again, as I said, realize that, we know that teaching is not easy. Teaching your old children or grandchildren, as the case may be, is definitely not easy. Any change to the admission process for kindergarten? Basically, yeah. So, I mean, if you're coming into kindergarten, you're coming into kindergarten. The big thing for us is we usually do screening in the spring. We might do screening over the summer. We might do. Your kid might come to school and we screen them then. So that is, again, we will have kindergarten. It's just how we get started and how we do, do that process. Yes, I did say grading is only pass fail, and again, those rubrics will be coming out. You'll be able, and we're calling them engagement rubrics. We're looking for kids to be engaged and trying to move forward. And if they're engaged and trying to move forward, then they're going to pass. And if you are having difficulty, reach out to your teachers. They are still emailing back and forth. Guidance counselors are still meeting with groups and talking with parents, and they are there to help. Any plans for 8th grade and 5th grade students? Those are in the works. I'm assuming you're talking about end of year closure activities. I'm not quite sure exactly what that will look like. We are very lucky in this town in that we have probably one of the most amazing local cable station people in the entire world. So we're looking at that as a possibility. So, okay. So, and again, we have said several times that if there is a need for devices, or if you are, it's getting more difficult to help facilitate internet access. But if you are, needing that, then again, reach out to your principals and go there. So how our kindergarten is going to be evaluated. We probably will be teaching some kindergarten, revisiting some kindergarten standards as we start in grade 1. Perhaps we will do some screenings of kindergarten over the summer. Right now, that's all very much up in the air. So. Okay, so will there be adjustments? Will there be adjustments for curriculum for the first grade? There'll be adjustments probably for all curriculum in all grades. And we are not planning on holding students back. Okay. All right. So I think I've gone through, we will have, as part of our budget process, we are, we are buying 2 more grades of Chromebooks next year. We will be darn close. We anticipate that perhaps we can use some of the CARES money, and again, still waiting, but to ensure that we have more Chromebooks. So if you need a Chromebook, if that is a barrier, if that is causing problems in your home, then please reach out to your principal at the local elementary schools. Okay. So with that, I'm going to say good evening, good afternoon. Stay well, stay safe, keep social distancing. We're all trying to get through this together. And as always, we appreciate your support, and thanks for joining me. I'll probably do another one of these another week or so, and hopefully I actually did it on time. I just didn't realize that the Norwood Public Schools actually has 3 different pages, and I was on a different page. So, anywho, that's you need to be able to laugh at yourself, right? Okay. All right. Thank you, everybody. Stay well, stay safe.